Now to some heartbreaking news. Our nation saw its deadliest mass shooting in years when a Louisiana man shot and killed 8 children this morning. Tonight we're learning more about that gunman, Shamar Elkins, who was the father of 7 of those 8 slain children. Tonight, the community of Shreveport has been left shattered. The children, 3 boys and 5 girls, ranging in age from 3 to 11.
Police say the crime scene spans 2 houses. It ended when officers opened fire on the gunman during a police chase. Eyewitness News reporter Tim Pulliam is live now with new details tonight. Tim?
Liz, Jory, we now know the names of the 8 kids shot and killed, and we're also learning that the shooter had ties to the military and was known to police. This is a Facebook image of the Louisiana man law enforcement believe is a cold-blooded killer. Shreveport police identifying him as Shamar Elkins, the alleged gunman who shot and killed 8 kids. At least 7 of them were his own flesh and blood. The coroner released their names, a total of 7 siblings and a cousin ranging in age from 3 to 11, Jayla, Shayla, Kayla, Layla, Markaden, Soraya, Kedarian, and Braylon. Neighbors mourn their deaths at the crime scene.
This is not a freaking joke. This is real, and this is the result when someone snaps.
Police are still trying to determine what motivated the shooting. The attack began before sunrise when police say the suspect shot a woman at one home and then drove to another house to unleash more violence.
The gray house is the house in which 7 children were located inside that were deceased. There was an additional deceased child that looked like he had tried to escape the residence out the back on the roof.
Officers say a second woman was shot and is believed to be the mother of the suspect's children. Both women are now in the hospital in critical condition. Officers fired at the suspect during a chase after he carjacked the vehicle at gunpoint. ABC News reporting the 31-year-old joined the Louisiana National Guard in 2013 and served 7 years without being deployed. The shooting took place in House Speaker Mike Johnson's district. He offered thoughts and prayers to the family. The shooting impacting people beyond Louisiana. The mayor of Shreveport highlighting that in his statement that reads in part, "Tragedy like this does not belong to one family alone. It belongs to all of us. Today, our community is grieving the unimaginable loss of innocent children. There are no words that can make sense of it and no distance that shields us from it."
Take out this evil out of our nation, out of our parish, out of our city, out of our lives, God. We know mental illness is real, God.
This attack considered one of the deadliest mass shootings in Louisiana. The community asking for prayers.
This community needs you. I need you. Because how do we get through this?
According to the FBI, domestic violence crimes are up. Between 2020 and 2024, law enforcement reported more than 11,000 domestic violence murder victims. In this case, investigators are still trying to figure out what led up to this shooting. Tim Pulliam, ABC 7, Eyewitness News.
Tim, thank you.
About 5:55 a.m. on Sunday morning, Shreveport police received the first call regarding a disturbance at a residence in the 300 block of West 79th Street. The caller stated that they were on top of a house. The suspect was inside and that a male had been shot. 3 minutes later at 5:58, dispatch received an additional call indicating the suspect was a relative of the caller. A minute later, 5:59 a.m., dispatch was advised that approximately 9 individuals resided at the location. The caller further stated that the suspect, identified as Shamar Elkins, had shot everyone inside the home. At 6:00 a.m., 1 minute later, the caller advised that she and her children had fled from the roof and were now in the backyard. 6:01 a.m., officers arrived on the scene. 6:03, officers made contact with the caller at the residence. At 6:05 approximately, officers requested the Shreveport Fire Department to stage at a nearby location close to Linwood. 6:07 a.m. A second call was received regarding a shooting in the 500 block of Harrison Street. The caller stated that her boyfriend had shot her, taken her 3 children, and fled the scene. 6:08 a.m. The victim identified the suspect as Shamar Elkins. At 6:10, dispatch linked the Harrison Street shooting with the shooting on West 79th Street and that they all were related. At 6:15, officers received information that the suspect had carjacked a red Kia Sportage at West 79th, closest to Linwood. At 6:17 a.m., our traffic units out on random patrol encountered or observed that particular vehicle traveling southbound on Interstate 49. The officers advised at 6:18 that they were crossing the Red River Bridge into Bossier City. At 6:20, officers received information that the children taken from the Harrison Street residence may be inside of the fleeing vehicle. 6:23 a.m., officers advised that they were exiting near Swan Lake area. 6:25 a.m. approximately, officers located the injured victims from the Harrison Street shooting. 6:29 a.m., officers made contact with the suspect through an exchange of gunfire. At 6:30 a.m., officers confirmed contact with the suspect in the 400 block of Brompton Lane. 6:40 a.m., officers advised that the suspect vehicle was empty and no children were located inside. 6:43 a.m., officers cleared the residence of West 79th Street where multiple deceased victims were located. 7:03 a.m., Shamar Elkins was pronounced deceased at the scene on Brompton Lane. 7:14 a.m., the Shreveport Police Department contacted the Louisiana State Police Investigative Division, and they began their deployment to the Bossier City address to begin to investigate the officer-involved shooting.
All I can tell you today is my heart is saddened. It has brought me to my knees, and of course that's a great place to be, because then we can communicate with God.
Apparently the shooter started at one place and shot someone who he had a relationship with or was in a relationship with. And then he went to the other location where there actually, I think, were 9 children there. One of the children has survived, but 8 of them were shot and killed by the same person. He then bolted from the house, hijacked a car, and took off. The police gave chase, and they ended up in an exchange of gunfire, at which time the assailant is deceased.
Over 30% of our crimes and 30% of our murders in the city of Shreveport are domestic in relation. Now that number has gone up. We've more than doubled our homicides in the city of Shreveport because of one act of domestic violence. We as a community, black, white, Republican, Democrat, need to stand together and fight for what is right. This is nothing but pure evil. We can have 100 new police cars. We can have a brand new, beautiful, multi-million-dollar police substation right up the road. But until we stop this violence, the cycle of violence, like I've said over and over again, we're going to still be standing here, and it's only going to get worse.
Because the truth is this: domestic violence is not a private issue. It's not a family issue. It is a community issue. And when we fail to respond in a coordinated, consistent, and compassionate way, people die. This tragedy is a painful reminder that we cannot afford to work in silos. We cannot afford to wait until the next crisis. We cannot afford to treat domestic violence as an afterthought. We must ensure that every victim, every mother, every father, every child has access to safety, support, and intervention before the violence escalates. So today, I'm calling on every leader in this parish to join us in building a fully coordinated, community-wide response to domestic violence.
I was born and raised in Cedar Grove, so that was the neighborhood I grew up in. So I get it, and I just want to, it don't even have to be Cedar Grove. It can be Cooper Road, Allendale, Lakeside. All communities, all neighborhoods should feel the tragedy of today.
Now I'm asking you to please utilize every resource that the sheriff has brought forth now when you know that these situations occur. We cannot be and make this a joke. This is not a freaking joke. This is real, and this is the result when someone snaps. So I'm gonna ask the community, along with prayer, with every mental health consultant, counselor that is out here, this family and this community needs you. I need you. Because how do we get through this? How do we get to the next level? It is real and this is raw. And these are the tragedies when there are domestic violence or domestic disturbances in our community.
Football with him again. I'm never gonna get to hear him say, "Daddy, can I get this bag of chips?" I'm never gonna get to hear my nieces say, "Guncle, can I get a nana?" "Guncle, you going to work?" "Guncle, are you okay?" I'm never gonna hear that again.
Troy Brown's wife and daughter were the two who escaped. They were injured jumping off the roof to get away. They're being treated at the hospital, and they are expected to survive their injuries.
What motive have authorities come up with so far?
You know, authorities have talked about this as a domestic dispute. I talked today with Elkin's wife, or one of the women Elkin shot her in the nose, in the face. He told her, "You caused this." She doesn't know what that means. I've talked to several members of family on both sides. They say that it's possible that Elkin's wife had indicated that she wanted a divorce in recent days. And there may have even been some effort to finalize that request as soon as today. They also told me Elkins had struggled with mental health. He knew that he had sought treatment recently, that they had talked to him about it. Those seem to be the only indications that might offer any sort of answers as to why something this awful could happen. Lindsay?
So senseless. Jason Allen, thank you.
The neighborhood looked like any other. Quiet streets, familiar faces, the kind of place where nothing truly unexpected was supposed to happen. It was the kind of environment where children laughed freely, where neighbors waved in passing, and where life moved at a steady, predictable pace. But beneath that calm surface, something had already begun to unravel, unnoticed by most, ignored by others, and misunderstood by those closest to it. At the center of it all was Shamar Elkins, a man whose name would soon echo far beyond these streets. To some, he was just another face in the community, someone trying to navigate life like everyone else. There were moments where things seemed ordinary, even stable, but behind closed doors, the reality was far more complicated. Struggles had been building, personal conflicts, emotional tension, and a sense that something wasn't quite right. The signs weren't always loud or obvious, but they were there, scattered in small moments that didn't seem important at the time. As the days passed, those quiet warning signs began to form a pattern. Conversations became strained. The atmosphere around him shifted in subtle ways. People may have noticed changes, but didn't fully understand what they meant, or how serious they could become. It's often only in hindsight that these moments take on new meaning, revealing just how much was happening beneath the surface. Then came the day everything changed. The calm was broken, not gradually, but all at once. Confusion spread quickly, followed by fear, as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Something unthinkable was unfolding, and the sense of safety that once defined the neighborhood was gone in an instant. Stay with this story as we uncover what really happened. And if you want to support more in-depth storytelling like this, consider liking the video and subscribing so you don't miss what comes next. In the days leading up to the tragedy, the story becomes less about a single moment and more about a slow unraveling that few fully understood at the time. Those who knew Shamar Elkins described changes that didn't happen overnight. There were tensions at home, disagreements that seemed to stretch longer than usual, and a growing sense that something deeper was wrong. From the outside, it might have looked like the kind of stress many families go through. But beneath that surface, the pressure was building in ways that would soon become impossible to ignore. Reports later pointed to a relationship that had been breaking down. Separation, emotional strain, and unresolved conflict created an environment filled with uncertainty. Situations like this are often complicated, layered with emotions that don't have easy explanations. But what stood out in this case was how quickly things appeared to escalate. What might have once been arguments or disagreements began to carry a heavier weight, leaving those around him concerned, but unsure of what to do or how serious it truly was. Amid all of this were the children, young, full of life, and completely unaware of the storm forming around them. Their presence in the story is a reminder of what makes this tragedy so difficult to comprehend. They represented innocence, normalcy, and the everyday moments that should have continued uninterrupted. Instead, their lives became part of a situation no one could have imagined, reaching such a devastating point. As the timeline draws closer to that day, the tension becomes harder to overlook. Decisions were made, emotions intensified, and whatever line once separated conflict from catastrophe began to fade. Looking back, people would ask the same question over and over. Could this have been prevented? Stories like this deserve to be told with care and respect. If you believe in shedding light on real-life events like this, consider liking the video so it can reach more people, and stay with us as the story moves into the moments when everything changed. The day it all came to a head did not begin with any obvious signal that something was about to go terribly wrong. For many in the area, it started like any other day, routine, familiar, predictable. But within a short span of time, that normalcy began to fracture. What followed unfolded quickly, in fragments that were confusing at first, then deeply alarming as the situation became clearer. Calls for help began to surface, scattered and urgent, each one adding another piece to a puzzle no one wanted to believe was real. There was a sense of disbelief that something so serious could be happening across multiple locations, tied together by a single unfolding crisis. People nearby struggled to make sense of what they were hearing, while those directly affected were thrust into a moment of fear and chaos that no one could have prepared for. As authorities moved in, the scale of the situation started to come into focus. This was not an isolated incident, but something far more complex and devastating. Emergency responders worked quickly, trying to secure the scene and bring some order to what felt like complete disorder. The atmosphere was tense, filled with uncertainty, as information continued to come in piece by piece. Amid the confusion, there were individuals who managed to escape, their survival becoming one of the few threads of relief in an otherwise overwhelming situation. Others were left dealing with the immediate aftermath, trying to understand what had just happened and why. The emotional weight of those moments was heavy, not just for those directly involved, but for the entire community watching it unfold in real time. If you've been following this story so far, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps bring more awareness to stories that need to be told with care and responsibility. And as the situation continued to unfold, what came next would leave an even deeper mark on everyone connected to it. As the immediate chaos began to settle, the reality of what had happened started to take hold in a way that words could barely capture. Law enforcement worked through the aftermath, securing scenes, gathering information, and trying to piece together a timeline that still felt almost impossible to comprehend. The search for answers became just as urgent as the earlier calls for help, but this time the focus shifted from stopping the crisis to understanding it. News of the tragedy spread quickly, reaching far beyond the neighborhood where it began. What was once a quiet, familiar place was now at the center of a story that left people across the country in shock. Friends, relatives, and even strangers struggled to process the weight of it all. Vigils began to form, small gatherings where people came together not because they had answers, but because they needed to stand in solidarity with those affected. For the families, the pain was immediate and overwhelming. Survivors faced not only physical recovery, but the emotional impact of what they had lived through. The community, too, carried its own burden, questions that lingered, memories that would not fade, and a sense that something had been lost that could never truly be replaced. People began looking back, revisiting past interactions and moments, wondering if there had been something they missed, something that could have changed the outcome. Authorities continued their investigation, examining every detail in an effort to understand how events escalated to this point. Discussions around domestic conflict, mental health, and intervention began to surface, not as excuses, but as part of a larger conversation about prevention. It became clear that this was more than a single incident. It was a reflection of deeper issues that often go unnoticed until it's too late. Moments like this remind us how important it is to stay aware and connected. If you have thoughts about this story, share them respectfully in the comments. And consider sharing this video to help keep the conversation going in a meaningful way. In the days that followed, the noise of breaking news slowly gave way to something quieter, but far heavier. A lingering sense of loss that settled over everyone connected to the story. The headlines began to fade, but for the families and the community, this was not something that could simply pass with time. It became a defining moment, one that would be remembered not just for what happened, but for what it revealed about the fragility of safety and the importance of paying attention to the signs we often overlook. People came together in different ways. Some offered support through presence, others through words, and many simply by listening. It was in these moments that the true weight of the tragedy could be felt, not through details of what happened, but through the silence left behind. Conversations began to shift from shock to reflection, with many asking how situations like this can be recognized earlier, and what can be done to prevent them from reaching such devastating outcomes. There is no simple answer. Cases like this are complex, shaped by layers of personal struggle, emotional strain, and missed opportunities for intervention. But what remains clear is the importance of awareness, checking in on people, taking concerns seriously, and not dismissing changes in behavior that feel out of place. While not every situation leads to tragedy, every moment of attention has the potential to make a difference. As we close this story, it's important to remember the lives affected, not as part of a headline, but as individuals who matter deeply to those around them. Their memory deserves respect, and their story deserves to be told with care. If you believe in telling real stories with purpose and respect, take a moment to like this video, share it so others can learn from it, and subscribe to the channel to continue supporting meaningful storytelling.